Hi, everyone. Welcome to Two Guys Talking Sports. This is our first college episode of the year. We'll be talking a little Clemson and Carolina football, giving our thoughts on how we think the seasons are going to go, because this is pretty much a preview episode since no one's played yet. And then we may just have a little dust of national talk at the end.
All this realignment.
Yeah.
I don't know who everybody is now. Where are they at?
Exactly. All right, let's kick it off. We're going to start out, I guess, with Clemson. Both of us being Carolina fans, we'll try and stay as unbiased as we can.
Yeah.
On this show.
Some good information this year.
Yep. Clemson, they're coming off a 11-3 season. You know, another ACC championship title. They did lose their bowl game, but all in all, it's a good season. Probably not up to what Clemson fans' standard is.
They've kind of built. Dabo's kind of built that foundation where it's like it's either playoffs or bust, because they had a great season, but it's kind of like just another year for them.
Yeah, 11-3 is nothing to knock at. Yeah, exactly. They did lose to South Carolina. That was one of their three losses last year. Their quarterback play was just what we always talked about last year that it was. It was just he had some really good games, and then he had some really bad games, and then they ended up going with Klubnik there at the end of the year. So,
and another thing is I think the play calling, I think they tried to cater around to like what DJ could do, but at the end of the day, it was very conservative play calling, and it just at the end of the day just didn't work out for either one of them, because clearly none of them are there anymore.
Right. Yeah. And Streeter, he was an in-house hire when they hired him, and that was also a question mark throughout the beginning of last year was. How was he going to do as an OC, especially since he's never done it before. And like you said, there was some games where they looked great and some games where it was really questionable. So they did let go of Streeter and replace him with probably the top
candidate you could get. Yeah. And I don't think some people realize like how important your assistant coaching staff is, because and especially with Dabo's like a great CEO, and he surrounded himself with great assistants. I mean, you can't compare like South Carolina when we had our big run under Spurrier, but during that time frame, like that 3-4 year period, we had one of the best assistant staffs in the country. And when those guys left or sought promotions or took lateral positions, the guys Spurrier replaced them with were not qualified to be there.
Right.
And I think Dabo liked the culture he built, and Streeter had been on that staff for quite a bit of time. And he probably thought it was just going to continue, but sometimes that's just how it always works out.
Yeah, I think he wanted to try and give his guy a shot. I don't blame him. Like you said, Streeter been there for a while. They wanted to give him a go at it. Dabo did it. 11-3. Again, not a bad season for him, but you could tell it just wasn't what they wanted.
Their defense was their bright spot, which that's how it's been since DJ was the quarterback there. I mean, because last season was Streeter's only season in that position. But even when Tony Elliott was there, it was kind of the same thing with DJ at quarterback. So, it's Klubnik's team now. So it'll be exciting to see what he can do this season.
It is Klubnik's team. He was obviously, a freshman this past year. He looked very good in some spots, and then he looked like a freshman in some spots, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But coming into this season, he's going to have to look like the guy from the jump.
Yeah, exactly. And the way he looked in the ACC championship game when they finally decided to bench DJ looked very good. But I feel like we could have had a great game against North Carolina's defense. Right. So he's learning under a new coordinator. And this coordinator might be his only season here, because if this offense comes out strong like they were last year with TCU with Riley there, instead of short-term rental, what happens?
I think so. I think there was probably some schools already looking at Riley as a head coach this past year, maybe some smaller schools, and somebody of his caliber of, play calling and how he's been as his assistant. He probably is looking for a bigger job. Leaving TCU, obviously it's a lateral move, but it's kind of got a little bit of uptick to it.
Well, and also the head coach at TCU, he's one of those head coaches that I think is very involved in their offensive play calling, because that's the type of coach that he is. Where it's like he's coming to Dabo, and this is no knock on him, but like he was never a coordinator,
right? Dabo's
so
not
he's not gonna, he wasn't this offensive genius that's coming in. So I think Riley's gonna have free reins within like what Dabo wants to run. But this is going to be his offense and what he wants to call.
And so that could be, you could see a down year potentially. I don't think so.
No, yeah.
But you could potentially see a down year with Riley in his play calling, and he may struggle because, like you said, the head coach at TCU, he was heavily involved in the game planning and the play calling during games.
Yeah.
So now that it's the show's all on Riley, and he's orchestrating this thing. You may see some struggles at times in certain situations.
And you see this a lot with, any first-time coordinator with any position or any school. They get promoted just like with Streeter last year. He may be a good quarterbacks coach. That doesn't always translate. He's going to be a great play caller.
Right. Yeah. Again, I think defense is going to be.
They upgraded at the offensive position
for sure. I think defense is still going to be Clemson's strong suit, as it always has been. They're always going to have a top defense. So that's going to kind of
front seven.
Yeah, that's kind of going to give that offense a little bit of leeway to try and figure things out at the beginning. But they're going to want to see that high-powered offensive production.
Clemson got very spoiled when they had Deshaun and Trevor, and rightfully so. That's what they should see every season. With as a bigger program as Clemson is, it shouldn't be. It kind of reminds me of like how Nick Saban was at Alabama when they were dominant on defense and their offense just kind of puttered through just enough to, not lose them a game. And I feel like that's kind of how Clemson was the past 2 seasons. But I think this year it's going to be, if Klubnik can adjust to a new play caller, big season coming up for him, I think Clemson's going to be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I think they can be. Like I said, it's just all going to come down to how they mesh and how quickly they can mesh. Because they got a tough game coming up within the first 4 weeks. Playing Florida State, who some people think that Florida State's a playoff team this year.
I think a lot of people have Florida State ranked ahead of Clemson, but I don't know. Just until Clemson's dethroned, that's their conference.
Right.
Like a lot of people have Florida State going to the college football playoff.
Yeah. Looking at Clemson's schedule, they're going to start off on Labor Day at Duke. So they won't play this coming up Saturday. Okay. So when we do our recap episode, we do film these on Sundays, so we won't have that score yet. Yeah. So we'll make sure to make a post about it.
It's not because we're Carolina fans.
Exactly. So they kind of have an easy, schedule to start with.
I feel like Duke's going to – I'm not saying Duke's going to win, but Duke was very improved last year under their first-year head coach. And I think Clemson wins pretty easily, but I think it might be can be a sneaky game.
Yeah. Then they have Charleston Southern, FAU, and then, of course, probably one of the bigger games on the year for them will be that Florida State game.
It's at home, so that helps.
Another one that sticks out to me on their schedule is going to be that Notre Dame game. Notre Dame, they played Navy this past, this weekend, so it's not like a true test.
You never know, and you also just never know what Notre Dame's going to be about. It's just like they're so wishy-washy, I feel. You just don't know.
They are. But I feel like that'll be a big game for them. And then, of course, just depending on how South Carolina looks, they got to come. They lost to South Carolina last year. Now they got to come to Williams-Brice at the end of the year this year.
I've got a question mark beside their game at Miami in October.
Yeah, Miami's one of those teams too. You never really know. They always kind of hype them up a little bit because of Miami and what they were.
They can recruit. They got that NIL fund.
They got the transfer. They've got the name. You hear the U that attracts players. So you just never know what you're going to get with Miami. Yeah. That could be a question mark game as well.
I'm pretty sure Miami's got 2 new coordinators as well. Yeah. Because Miami's old defensive coordinator is now I'm pretty sure he's the defensive coordinator at Alabama now.
Okay.
He fired Josh Gaddis. I think that's his name. Came from Michigan. So I don't know. You just never know. You can spend all this money, legally with NIL to get these players there, but if you can't develop them, because Miami had a pretty underperforming year last year, but That's a question mark I have for sure.
Yeah, like I said, it all just depends on kind of how they look. They could come out and be top 5, or they could come out and be bottom of the ACC. Yeah. You just never know with Miami.
And Syracuse usually gives Clemson a fit. Like
Syracuse, yeah, and NC State, and both of those games are away games, and that's usually when Clemson does struggle with those teams. Yeah. Specifically those two teams. When they go to Syracuse, it's always a nail biter with them. Same thing with NC State.
I think it was a couple years ago. I think. Did NC State beat them a couple years ago? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like in overtime, I believe.
And the last time they went to Syracuse, it was like a last-minute win, I believe, for Clemson. So, those are always tough ones.
They should have an easy schedule, but they've got like a couple of games that should have like a question mark around it.
Exactly. So, again, they'll start off with Duke on Labor Day. We will make our pick for that, but we're going to save it till the end of the episode. Okay. All right, let's move along. Our boys, the South Carolina Gamecocks, coming off of a very good year, especially – in this, still rebuilding.
Yeah.
With Beamer coming off an 8-5 season, they did lose that Gator Bowl to Notre Dame, but there was a few players out for both sides. But I think we just kind of ran out of gas there at the end of that game.
Like the players we lost that sat out the bowl game, whether it be for draft purposes or transfer portal, we lost. I think. The top 6 outside of Juice,
right?
After Juice Wells, we didn't have any offensive production because Jaheim Bell was gone, Lloyd was gone, Josh Vann was hurt.
You also didn't have your coordinator.
I think that was a good thing, honestly.
Yeah, but again, that is you were throwing nobody. I don't even think they still haven't told us who was calling plays that game.
I mean, I was at the game. I think it was a production between all the assistants, but I think Freddie Kitchens had his hands in the cookie jar.
Yeah, so South Carolina will have a new offensive coordinator this year. Dow Loggins. He's taken over from Marcus Satterfield, and we've been clamoring for Satterfield to be gone for years, ever since he's been there.
This is not talking about South Carolina, but Satterfield went to Nebraska.
Yeah.
So like the big thing coming out of our first game last year was some of the players didn't even have a clue with what play calls he was calling. They never practiced it, and that was the big thing where it was just very complicated.
Yeah.
Trying to make it, and I get like you want to run a pro style offense, but you also have to cater to what you have and not make it super complicated. Apparently, that's what the issue he's having at Nebraska so far. A lot of players are saying that playbook is thick, and they are still learning a lot of plays, and they play this weekend.
Yeah, it's tough. Sometimes it is better to just be simple, especially in college football. I just feel like in NFL you have more time to implement that stuff because you're there. It's their job. They're there from 6 o'clock in the morning until they leave at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and so they have time to work on that kind of stuff on and off the field. You have that in college, but they're also in classes, taking tests, studying on top of that. So it's a little bit harder to take a thick playbook like that and try and learn it. So maybe if he had some success, and you also are moving kids out every 4 years, every 3 or 4 years, and in the NFL, you might have the same player for 7, 8 years where you can have a playbook like that. So,
and another thing I read is they like when they decided to like dummy it down, they more focused on getting their best playmakers on the field, which showed. Whereas at the beginning of the season, they were more concerned with like a specific package, which I think is one of the main reasons, not the only reason Jaheim Bell left. Is that. In college, you don't have a plethora of playmakers at your disposal, and you need to keep them on the field as much as possible.
Yeah, that was one thing that you could tell with Satterfield was he was a package guy, and you had certain players that played in certain packages, and if you were calling a play that wasn't that package, you might not have your best player on the field. And one of the first things that Loggins said in his press conference was that he was a scheme guy. He wanted all the players to know every play. No matter what the package was. Sure, you're going to have people coming in and out, but every player needs to know every play so that they can. It's not going to be, this guy is in on this play. It should be your best players out there as much as possible.
And I think you're going to like him because from all I've heard is he likes to throw the ball down the field. That's what you like.
You got to throw the ball down the field.
Throw the ball down the field.
And look, those last 3 games when we had so much success,
throw the ball down the field.
They were humming it down there.
And I think and I'm sure we'll get into this, but like I think the play calling was not good for Spencer Rattler.
No.
And again, we were calling plays that were not designed to go for our strengths. Where we're going to have the same issues this year. Our offensive line play was kind of sus.
Yeah, and some of that too is the way that you call the plays. You have linemen doing certain things on certain plays, and then if it's too difficult for the skill guys, there's some difficulty that the linemen are facing as well. So when you simplify that down, you could definitely tell the line did look better. So obviously, this is a head coach or offense coordinators coming from years of experience in the NFL calling plays.
But my only hesitation, and I think that a lot of fans had this, was he's not been very successful as a play caller.
But if you look at the teams that he was calling plays for at the time, they were at the bottom of the league at the time. They didn't have, obviously it's NFL talent, but they didn't have the best NFL talent.
And I think it was still within their first season, some coaches who just didn't make it outside of season, and Logans was there.
Yeah. So, but I think that you are going to see a lot more passing this year, and some of that is because we got a quarterback that can throw it. You got receivers that can catch it, but we are very thin at running back.
Yeah.
At this point, there's a chance that a former quarterback on our roster is not going to be our starting running back.
Joyner is just he's like a Swiss Army knife. He can do just about anything. But he's got the build for a running back.
He does, and he's looks like he's kind of beefed up a little bit, knowing that he's going to be playing more running back than anything.
Yeah.
Still, just in my mind, you have a guy that's played quarterback his entire career. He just now switched to that kind of scat back deal last year.
You can tell he still wasn't very comfortable.
Right, and then now you're just – it's going to be tough seeing him having to hit the hole.
Yeah, and I think this year especially, considering all we lost to, the draft or to the portal, just like the type of environment Beamer inherited, where you weren't a very deep team, and you're going to see it on both sides of the line this year. But hopefully all these guys stay. But I think we have probably one of the top offensive line recruiting classes coming in for next season.
Yeah, we do.
So help's on the way.
Help's definitely on the way. A lot of people, they're going to want to see improvement as far as win numbers, but I think if you can still win 7 games this year, that's still a good season because you kind of are ahead of schedule win-wise. With what Beamer took over from.
And honestly, there's games we won last year we had no business winning.
Right. Yeah.
That's my only nervousness about this season is our final 3 games were very good.
Yeah.
But let's not forget the other chunk of that schedule. Season we were not good.
Some of that was the players not gelling with the coordinators and specifically offense. And sometimes it's tough on the defense because it makes the defense look bad. But if you're out there a lot because the offense can't sustain drives, it doesn't matter how good you are. You're just going to gas out.
Yeah, but that was kind of the theme even when Muschamp was there. It's like we have a great defense, but you can't keep them on the field 90% of the time.
I think that we have a very good quarterback. I think that he's, from everything they've been saying, he looks just like he did those last 3 games. That's how he's looked in practices and camp. I think we got a ton of talent on the outside.
Agree.
Running back and offensive line play is going to be tough. But if you can throw the ball well enough, that's going to set up your run. Sometimes it's vice versa, where sometimes you need to run the ball to set up the pass. This year, I think it's going to be more pass to set up the run.
I think we're going to be using our tight ends a lot this year because we've got some athletic tight ends.
We do. They're not your prototypical tight end. That, they're going to be good blockers, but they can catch the ball.
Yeah. Whereas, we had technically Jaheim Bell was a tight end, but he wasn't a tight end.
Exactly.
And then Stogner, I just don't think he fit in well with. Yeah. And again, I think it all boils down to play calling. Right. But with the Trey Knox we got from Arkansas, then we got another
coming
kid
in.
from.
He's played for Logan, so
I think that's one of the main reasons why he came.
Yeah.
The kid from Western Kentucky, and then we got 2 high school.
You probably have one of what could be one of the best players in college football with Harbor. He's just a freak of nature with his speed, his size, just everything that he can do. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they utilize him.
And we might have to use him on defense more because we ain't got much on the edge.
Yeah. So line play is definitely going to be the big thing for South Carolina this year. But like I said, you can scheme up certain plays to help out your line.
Yeah, you can. And it shows. I mean, even Muschamp's last year when Bobo was the coordinator.
Right.
I mean, it was the same offensive line the next season.
Yeah.
But, we had over 1,000-yard rusher.
Yeah. It's all in how you scheme it up for those guys.
Agreed.
You got to know what you got. You got to know what you can and can't do. And sometimes I think that's where Satterfield kind of failed, is that he just wanted to do what he wanted to do and not know what his guys were capable of, and then tailoring his play calling towards that.
And this boils down to even last season. I don't think any of the assistant on the offensive side of the ball liked Satterfield.
Yeah, nah.
I know there was one assistant coach who literally threatened to leave.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that happened, but before the bowl game when we played North Carolina in Charlotte that year.
Yeah. So should be. It's a question mark season for me.
Yeah.
I think there's, looking at it, I think you could win a ton of games, and then looking at it, I think we could struggle a lot. So a lot of it is how you get started. Last year it was a shaky start.
Yeah.
And it was hard to just kind of build off that. Sometimes you just need a big win at the start.
And it starts first game.
Yeah, they're taking on a ranked opponent in North Carolina, in Charlotte.
Yeah.
So kind of not a home crowd either way, kind of a neutral, neutral crowd. So I think that's a good starter game, because if you can come out there and get a win or a big win, it builds a lot of confidence, and then you do kind of get to ease into it a little bit more the next week with Furman before.
And they're not even a slouch. I mean, they're one of the top 10 teams in FCS.
Yeah. And then you go to Georgia, so that's going to be a tough one. South Carolina's schedule is probably one of the toughest, if not the toughest schedule.
And this is going to be the
based
last year
on preseason rankings.
Yeah. I mean, but normally, I don't know. This is going to be the last year the schedule's really like this, because they're going away from divisions, just like the ACC doesn't do divisions anymore. So even going back to Clemson's game against Florida State, even if one team loses, they're probably just going to see each other again in the ACC championship game. But ours is, it can either be really good or really bad for us this year. I'm teetering between a 5 to 7 win season. I think is optimistic.
Yeah, I think 7 would be great. Like I said, if you can get to 7 wins this year, you're kind of on pace with where you should be as far as a rebuild, because you do, like you said, you got a lot of help coming in.
Yeah.
A lot of people, we've gotten some wins here lately, and some big wins, especially for South Carolina fans. That Tennessee win followed up by that Clemson win. People are excited again, but sometimes you got to keep that excitement at bay, because
those were games we were not supposed to win.
Right, exactly.
Based off how we looked in.
Now, if you come out and you look like that at the beginning, against North Carolina on Saturday, okay, now I'm going to be excited. So it all depends on how you look coming out in that first game.
Just want to beat Missouri.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. That coach, and I think even Beamer did a podcast during the offseason, and he was talking about what coach you think. He didn't name one, but he's like, there's one I want, and I'm pretty sure it's Drinkowitz from Missouri.
Some bad blood there. So South Carolina will start off this week on Saturday in Charlotte.
Saturday night.
Yep. Let's jump in and make some picks real quick. Obviously, we only got 2 of them here.
Yeah.
South Carolina played on Saturday night against North Carolina. Number 21 North Carolina, South Carolina unranked at the moment. I don't really know. Yeah, I don't know why North Carolina's ranked.
My thing with preseason rankings, I'm fine with doing 1 through 10, because that's usually going to be. There's some that are there just because their name.
1 through 10 is pretty much okay. Where did you finish last year? You probably didn't lose a lot, and what you did lose, you probably replaced it with good talent. So. Okay, you can give me 1 through 10, but when we're getting into North Carolina being number 21, sure, they played in the ACC championship game, but
they've got one of the worst defenses in the entire country. They're there because their quarterback, Drake May. That's what I'm nervous about. Yeah, but I mean, one of our strong suits on our defense is the secondary. Yeah. So we'll see if we can get some pressure, but don't look past Kai Kroger. He was the unsung hero for our offense last year.
Nobody ever really likes to give a punter the praise, but a lot of times when the offense is faltering, if your punter can help out your defense by pinning the opposing offense back, putting them behind the 20 is always a great thing. So you don't ever want to look past your punter. That is a key position.
I mean, the Clemson game, especially for Kai Kroger, we sputtered a lot on offense, but when we punted, Clemson was starting within their own 20-yard line majority of the time.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to go with South Carolina on this one.
Yeah, I think that's a given. We're both going to take South Carolina, but I really think this game is going to boil down to who scores last.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a 12-round fight.
I mean, unless North Carolina's just drastically changed their defense from last season, which I don't think so. But another big thing is for North Carolina, they've got the receiver that is currently ineligible by the NCAA for the transfer, and they appealed it, and they still haven't heard anything. There's a lot of indications he won't be playing Saturday. So if he's not, that's one of their big offensive weapons they had coming in from the transfer portal. So I mean that might help, but I think it's just going to be an offensive show. Definitely take that.
And I hope that South Carolina does have the injury bug already at the beginning of the year with Wells and Harbor, and I think there was one more. Yeah, Trey Knox injured. They all three say they were playing.
Yeah.
But we've heard that story before, too, where players are like, I'm playing, and then we don't see them until week 3.
And it's just all soft tissue stuff, and it's like...
That's going to happen. That's going to happen.
I get it, but it's like you can expect that stuff in the middle of the season. We ain't even started. We just started camp.
For Harbor, it kind of makes more sense for Harbor because no matter how much working out you do and conditioning and stuff, that college level is just so much more. And I don't care what kind of. I mean, he's a freak of nature, but you're going to just the grind it is in those college camps and stuff like that. You're going to have that. So, but they all say they're playing. And I don't have any reason not to believe him.
And another thing for Harbor is, I mean, he probably wasn't doing a lot of off-season programs for football because he's running track.
Yeah, he's still trying to train for the Olympics as well.
So, I don't think he spent a lot of – I mean, he still worked out, but I don't think it was a workout catered to an upcoming football season.
Yeah, and a lot of it, like I said, is just getting used to that college grind. Do
you think we'll see Lenore Sellers at all Saturday?
I don't know. I don't think you'll see him till Furman game.
I don't know, man.
Unless they have packages built in for him, maybe. But he's having a great camp.
I think Luke Doty's still like the official second string quarterback.
But he also started taking reps at wide receiver. So,
but he's been taking reps at wide receiver since Rattler got there,
exactly,
or even before Rattler got there. So it's. But I think South Carolina wins, but I think it's going to be a pretty close game.
Yeah, it might be a last.
Our
second
games
field
against
goal.
North Carolina are usually pretty close.
Yeah. All right, and then Clemson will take on Duke on Labor Day, and that's at Duke. So Clemson on the road to start with, but that's not going to mean anything. Yeah.
I went to a Duke game a few years ago, and it looked like a high school stadium.
Yeah, I am interested to see how Klubnik plays after that shaky game in the bowl game. I'm also, interested to see how Riley does with the play calling because it's going to be different kind of play calling than what Clemson's used to a lot.
Yeah.
They're used to kind of that bubble screen and then hit them downfield or something like that. Riley, he likes to throw it downfield.
Yeah, and I think this is another thing that's kind of played Clemson the past couple of years is they just don't have the offensive playmakers outside of Maffa and Shipley. I mean, they've got Antonio Williams, but there's still a big question mark at receiver position. Yeah. Whereas, normally in their national championship years, they had 4 different options they can throw to that are consistently downfield and are great receivers, and they're playing in the NFL, and you don't really have that right now. Or they might, but we don't know much about it.
Exactly. I think Clemson's going to win this game big. I think that first quarter it could be a low-scoring quarter because, for one, Klubnik, he played a few games last year, but now he's officially the guy.
Yeah.
First game of the year, he's going to come out excited. I wouldn't be shocked to see him overthrow a couple balls.
Adrenaline's going to be pumping.
Yeah, until he just kind of gets settled down. It might be midway through the. I could be completely wrong.
Yeah.
I just, as a young guy,
you never know what. I mean, that's the.
You also have a new coordinator that's going to want to show off too. So I could see them throwing a lot of deep balls to start with, just kind of getting them both.
I think you just keep it simple. get in a rhythm, and then you can open it up.
Well, one thing that Clemson can't do this year, though, is forget about Shipley because he is a dog.
Yeah, and I'm honestly, like, this going back to the Carolina game last year, I feel like they forgot about him. Because, I mean, he broke off some big runs against us, and then it's
like they didn't use him. I think they kind of freaked out. They kind of got that close game, and they freaked out.
But that goes back to what you're saying. I don't even think it was this episode, but possibly even last year. You never really know what type of coordinator you can scheme a plan as a position coach, but until you're actually the one calling the plays, you just don't you don't really know how you're going to react in a situation. And I think Garrett Riley working under the TCU coach helped a lot, and I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, I do too. So I'm going with Clemson on this one, and I think it'll be at least 2 or 3 touchdown victory.
I just don't know much about Duke. I wish we knew more. Like, they had a great season, but again, like I said earlier, until Clemson gets dethroned, it's their conference.
Yep, I agree.
Easily.
All right, before we wrap this up, want to talk every now and then we'll talk a little bit of national. There's nothing going to be set in stone where we talk about a certain amount of games or something like that. So off camera we mentioned, how do you think Coach Prime's going to look? He was probably the biggest hire, biggest name hire at least this offseason going to Colorado. There was a lot of stuff with the transfers. He brought in a lot of his guys and pretty much told the people or the players at Colorado basically, I'm bringing my own. Yeah, the portal's open. Yeah. And then they have their spring game. Some of the guys that he was like counting on, then they're hitting the transfer portal. So
I think Colorado's going to have a down year. Like, let's not forget. Like, yes, I think depending how long Coach Prime stays there, Colorado is an awful football team.
Yes.
I don't care how many of your guys you bring in, you can't replace an entire football roster in one off season. This is their last season.
I mean, they won one game last year.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this is their last season in the Pac-12.
Right.
Because I'm pretty sure they're moving to the Big Ten after this. That whole conference realignment's confusing. I think there's 4 teams in the Pac-12 after next season. Because this whole conference realignment is, I don't know, I think he will succeed, but for people thinking he's going to be it's not going to be competing for a conference title this year, I don't think it's going to happen.
No, it's going to take a few years, and they don't have a weak schedule either. They start out with number 17 TCU. Yeah. They're going to have to play Oregon. They're going to play USC, Stanford, Oregon State, Utah. They've got 5 or 6 ranked teams.
And they might beat Oregon State. DJ's quarterback at.
Yeah, and
all you Clemson
you know
fans
what?
I think a fresh start for DJ.
Exactly. Sometimes just getting away from what wasn't working.
Yeah.
You see it a lot in the MLB when a trade happens. Mid-season, you look at a guy. It happened a lot for the Braves when they won the World Series. Like, okay, we just traded for this guy mid-season. Yeah. He's not doing anything, and then they end up being key pieces. So,
instead of being like that guy. Yeah. And I don't think he had to be that guy at Clemson, but he also was taken over from Trevor Lawrence.
The problem it's not the problem for any quarterback really now at Clemson is you got to be the guy.
Yeah.
You got to be a big name. You got to be up for the Heisman. Just because of what they had back to back, you went from Deshaun Watson, who was amazing at Clemson,
had a year and 3 games with Kelly Bryant.
Exactly.
Had Trevor Lawrence, and I think that's the one thing I don't like is the downside for recruiting nowadays.
Yeah.
Because it's a business now with NIL. It's a business, but when DJ committed to Clemson, they already dubbed him the next thing at Clemson,
right.
And that's just not always going to work out.
Exactly.
Like they're not always going to be a Deshaun Watson or a Trevor Lawrence or a Martavis Bryant or Mike Williams or Sammy Watkins. It's just not always going to work out that way.
And they kind of already were doing it with Klubnik because towards the end they were like, look, we don't need DJ anymore. Don't start him because we got Klubnik.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you haven't seen Klubnik play yet.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's hard for you.
They were
a
already
lot of kids can look great in high school
Mm-hmm.
and just not have it in college.
Yeah.
Not to say that Klubnik doesn't. Like I said, I saw a lot of bright stuff from him, but still a young player that's going to – he still got some stuff to work out.
Yeah, I mean, look at South Carolina.
Unfortunately, Deshaun and Trevor were just that guy.
They set the bar way too high.
I mean, they were just that guy from the jump.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have that every time.
No, and those type of quarterbacks don't come around every year.
Exactly.
Like, they may seem like they are. I mean, you look at South Carolina. I mean, I feel like we've had a quarterback carousel for the past decade, ever since Connor Shaw left.
Yep.
And I think we've got Spencer, who is our guy.
Yeah.
And you know what you're going to get from him. But, you know, we always got 4-star quarterbacks. And they get here and they can't throw the ball accurate, or they don't have an arm, and it's like, well, how do they even get ranked that high?
A lot of this stuff is camps, man. These rankings that come from these camps.
It's money.
You go to these camps, a lot of kids can look great with no pads on and just a helmet, or no helmet, and you can look great in a 7-on-7. But when you got a guy that's 250, 6'5", barreling down on you, it's a lot different. And especially when you know, okay, I could get my head knocked off right now. What? And then we go to a camp, and nobody's going to hit me, and I can just sling this thing all over the place.
Nobody's rushing you.
Right.
And I think these recruiting websites cater to the top teams.
They do.
Where it's like, you know, somebody may be teetering on like a 4 to 5 star, but they commit to, I don't know, let's just throw Georgia Tech, for example.
Yeah.
They're going to keep that person at a 4-star, maybe even down to a 3-star.
Yeah.
But you get that same player who commits to Alabama, it's a 5-star. Like there's a guy, and obviously we know more about South Carolina recruiting because we're Gamecock fans. But there's a kid that committed to South Carolina, was 4-star, and like a week or two after, he drops to a 3-star
immediately.
And it's like the stars aren't always a thing. Like with 5 stars, it's 9 times out of 10 you know what you're going to get out of them.
Yeah. And
especially at skill positions.
Like I said, a lot of that is this camp stuff because obviously the guys that do these rankings, they can go to these big-time camps. They can see all of these guys at one time and get a kind of a gist on what the player is. These ranking guys, they're not going and watching every single game for every single player to see what they're actually doing on the field. So, sometimes that kind of that's why I'm not really worried about stars a lot. Sometimes it's great to have it because you can say, okay, we're doing big things recruiting, but a lot of times you see it's the 2- and 3-star guys that nobody really knew about, and they're the ones making the biggest impact on the field.
Yeah, and and like you were saying, some of these players, like in their high school games, they could just be playing
soft
teams.
Right. I mean, you look at Jordan Birch, he was one of the top recruits in the nation, and he didn't really do anything at South Carolina.
No, he had, I think in his, he was there 4 seasons, maybe 3, and had 5 sacks. Yeah. Xavier Thomas from Clemson, kind of same thing. He was very highly recruited out of Wilson, transferred to IMG Academy, and hasn't really lived up to that ranking that he had coming out of high school. Yeah. And it's, he's had some issues with injuries.
A little bit with him. I saw a picture of him the other day. I mean, he looked shredded, but he looks more of a linebacker, and they got him playing on the line. Sometimes a position change is good for players, but it's tough. So anyway, just to wrap this episode up, South Carolina Saturday in Charlotte, 7:30, taking on North Carolina, and then Clemson will play Labor Day
Monday night,
and they will be at Duke. So,
and another thing is just kind of like some maintenance. All these episodes for the college show will be exclusively on YouTube. We're still going to share it on our Facebook page, but get to the YouTube app. Subscribe to the channel because we appreciate everybody's support.
We appreciate the viewership. Like, share, comment. Let us know if there's anything else you'd like to see us talk about. If you agree or disagree with us, we can take some criticism.
We're Gamecock fans, but I feel like, I know at least I will. We're going to let our fandom show a little bit, but at the end of the day, like, I think we're both can,
for sure,
give some fair analysis, if that's what you want to call it,
exactly,
on Clemson this season.
All right, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.